And in fact, the view you see there is the one I have looking straight in front of me. It's absolutely magic.
It is. It is.
Wow. Where are you, Martin?
I'm in Austria, close to Vienna.
Okay, well, Vienna is lovely too.
Yes, it is. But we have a very mixed summer weather. The weather is changing all the time, from very hot to very cold to rain to sun, whatever. Very unstable.
Yeah, I hear that. Normally, I would be at my house just outside Geneva this time of year, but I couldn't get there. No planes.
Yeah.
So this is not too bad, though.
No, you can survive.
Yeah.
So I have some good people who have just joined in. Mr. Durga Surekha, Sanskriti Jain. And I'll begin the recording in a minute now. So the format is, I hope you've received all the questions from our side, yeah. And that is in a place. So the whole series would be recorded. It's already live on YouTube right now. We are already live on our channel, and we'll be recording it, and I'll be sending across the links and everything to you.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Well, hello, Harsha. Martin, even though we live next door to each other, we talk all the time via Zoom.
We do.
She's only, in fact, she's just over there, straight across the Indian Ocean there.
Yeah, she's just close by.
Hi, Harsha, again. Looking great as always. Yeah.
Okay, so I've begun the recording now. So, welcome everybody. Today, LIGC is being presented by IICSR, which is a dedicated training and research development institution in the space of CSR and sustainability. To promote responsible business practices, we would like to thank our media partners, Dainik Bhaskar, our outreach partner, which is dedicated to SDGs, SDG Chopal, which is which has a vision to have 700 plus districts and 6 lakh plus villages enabled with SDGs, and it is being supported by Niti Aayog until 2030. I would like to thank company CSR, which is the fastest news channel on CSR and sustainability, and EGJA Foundation for bringing in all the NGOs. Guest for today is Mr. Martin Neureiter. He was the chairperson of the task force developing ISO 26000, and he's running, he's in this space of CSR and sustainability since about 3 decades now, and is the founder of the company CSR International. Welcome, Martin. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Wonderful. You have studied law, worked with startup political parties, and now in sustainability and CSR. Which has been the most interesting phase in your career, and why CSR at this stage?
Okay, yeah, thank you for that question. I've done quite a few different things in my life so far. So I studied law, but at the end of the study, I thought that was a pretty stupid subject to study. And pretty boring. So I decided I would do something different and went into politics, where law is helpful, but you make the law, you don't interpret the law. So it was a bit more fun. And I worked with a small opposition party. And I can say that was a great school. And I wouldn't say that one phase is greater than the other. It is a question of the time and the setting and the interests that one has. And I think the time in politics was great. I was 10 years in Parliament and in the European Parliament. And it's a huge school, because you learn that the president of a country also has to eat the lunch and go to the toilet and do all these things. So I'm here with the Austrian president. I know him from that time. I know two judges on the Constitutional Court, etc., etc. And we're friends. It's not that it's, you know, the president of the country or something. So you learn that all the people are pretty much the same, and I don't make these, wow, this is the minister, or this is the president or something, because I know how they are also in their private life, and I know that it's actually a very, very tough life to be in politics, because you don't have your private freedom, and you don't have your private life. Even my party head, when she was a lady, when she went into a taxi, every taxi driver would recognize her and then would say, the cousin of my friend has a problem here, and I don't know, whatever, your piece. You always had to be a very public person. So after 10 years, I thought that's pretty boring now. I would do something different. And we founded a public affairs company, so linking it with politics and business. And it was quite fun. We had a IKEA furniture office in the backyard somewhere, and we ended up in the first district in Vienna, which is like the posh district with Norman Foster, architect, furniture, etc., etc. So it was good, but also very limited to Austria. And I always wanted to go out of Austria. Austria is a small country. We have 8 million people. That's half of Mumbai or something like that. And that's the whole country. So I then came across this topic of CSR, and with a friend of mine, I wrote the first German language book on the topic of CSR. And when you've written a book, you're considered an expert. Never mind what crap you've written in the book. It's the thick business card that you hand over, and you're considered an expert. And then many things happened along the road, and I came into ISO and the standardization world, which I had no idea that existed before, but it's coincidences. And now we are, I set up the CSR Company International. We're now in more than 40 countries, and we do businesses with a number of very large companies, mid-sized companies, small companies, governments. We have just done the Beijing Olympic Winter Games 2022 as a sustainable event. There's an ISO standard 20121 on sustainable events, and the Beijing Olympic Games 2022 are going to be a sustainable event, and we are the implementation partner on that. So that's quite like the Light Tower project we're currently doing. We are also involved in the Football World Cup 2022 in Qatar, with all the issues on labor issues, human rights issues, environmental issues there. The government has tasked us to address these issues. So I don't know, there's a lot of things going on. And now to come to the field of CSR at present and maybe in the near future, especially in Europe now with the Green Deal, etc., there is a big move in this direction. But I guess we will get to that a little bit later.
So you, now that you have your presence in more than 140 countries, and hello, yeah,
yes,
yeah, you have presence in 143 countries and across different continents in the world. You have definitely moved on from Austria. Tell us something about what was the process of formation of ISO 26000, which is considered as an international standard right now? What was the whole process of it, and how did you all arrive at the standards that you all have?
Well, if I would tell you that, then we would be sitting here tomorrow at the same time still talking. But in a very short wrap up, in 2000, the consumer organizations approached ISO and said there's a number of organizations claiming to be socially responsible, but the customer doesn't have any possibility to check this claim and to see if that claim is actually true. So we need an international standard on social responsibility. So then it was a long process with a lot of ups and downs and bumpy journey, because not everybody was necessarily happy to have an international standard on that subject. There's also a lot of competition amongst international organizations that, you know, everybody claims he's the father, the mother of CSR, and the others shouldn't be working in my backyard, etc. But in the end, by 2010, actually November 2010, after so a 10-year process, 99 countries actively participating in developing this standard, in a journey around the world, in meetings. That's why some people call ISO not the International Standards Organization, but the International Sightseeing Organization, because you do get around the world quite a bit. We managed to get a document that would find the approval of 93.5% of all countries that are members of ISO, which is 164 countries. So it has a huge approval rate, and it is an achievement. And I still believe it is probably the most relevant document around, because it has been produced in a multi-stakeholder process. So it wasn't so much the countries that were relevant, but we had 6 stakeholder categories: industry, government, the NGOs, the labor organizations, the consumer organizations, and others that were all the people who didn't fit in any of the other 5 other categories. And you would take all decisions based on these stakeholder categories. So not Austria or India or Switzerland or any other country would take any decision. It was the stakeholder group. So it was a true multi-stakeholder process. And I think that is one of the strengths of this document. So everybody was heard, everybody was included, nobody can claim that, you know, we as NGO were not present. You were present. Industry cannot say we don't like this because we didn't achieve this and that. You agreed to it. So it's really a very comprehensive global, and that's also important, global document. So an Indian company and an Austrian company, when they talk about social responsibility in the context of ISO 26000, they are talking about the same thing, and that's the relevant part.
Was there a challenge in India accepting the whole standard, and what was it about?
Yeah. That's one of my favorite stories. So in India voted no initially in 2010. It was one of 5 countries only that no, mainly based on the issue that ISO 26000 potentially could create the so-called non-tariff trade barrier, meaning that the European Union, for example, would say we only import products that have ISO 26000, that have been produced in a socially responsible manner. And India saw a danger that its competitive advantage of being able to produce very cheap would get lost, because if you have to implement social standards, if you have to implement environmental standards, etc., it adds to the costs of the production of your product. So I actually had a meeting in 2010 at the Academy of Science in New Delhi, and I was a representative of ISO there, and there were guys from WTO, the World Trade Organization, from Indian government, and whatever. And there was a big bashing of ISO, why we are making this standard and why this will create a non-tariff trade barrier, etc. And I made a statement which, for some reason, didn't go down very well. I said, well, honestly, what's bad about improving the working conditions of people in Indian factories? What's bad about improving the environmental situation in some areas? And they didn't really approve that statement very much. The funny story is now They then came up with, we will do our own thing. So in India, you have these voluntary guidelines on social responsibility, or whatever exactly the name is. In the end, in the beginning of this year, I think India finally decided it would accept the ISO 26000 unchanged, not in a single word. So they could have done that 10 years ago, but it's okay. We are happy that India has also joined. So now ISO 26000 is also part of the Indian standards world in that sense. So, but it took 10 years for not changing a single word, but that's that's the fun part of it.
Yeah. You have also worked for the extractive industry, goal to be more precise. Yeah. So how was the experience, and how do you think they can be made more sustainable being an extractive industry?
Yeah, I think that's, for me, that was my learning school, because one of my first jobs as a consultant was to work for a very controversial gold mining project in Romania, actually. And I had luckily a management that understood that they can only get this project done if the community gets involved, if we do the right things. And so I had a huge learning curve there, because we had luckily also enough budget to do good things, but also the management that would listen to advice. And I think that's always the big issue, because sometimes they get consultants, but in the end they don't listen to the consultants, but just do whatever they think. In this case, we had a management that would listen, and we sometimes did things wrong, and we would go back again and say, okay, that didn't work, let's try something else. And I wasn't fired as consultant immediately, because something didn't work out as maybe aspired. So I worked 4 years as senior vice president for sustainability in that company. But I was an external consultant, but they gave me that title, and I had a team that I had the possibility to work with. And we tried a lot of things. How can you make extractive industry more sustainable? Well, extractive industry, as the name says, extracts something from where, and it never comes back again, because if you take gold, it's in the mountain. And once you've taken it out, it's gone. It doesn't regrow or something. So you definitely are not sustainable in the sense of circular economy or things like that. But I have very strong feeling, or a very strong opinion on that. And we actually included that also in ISO 26000. It is not important what you are doing. It is the question that social responsibility tries to answer is, how do you do it? How do you address these issues? As long as your business is legal. So the mafia cannot claim to be socially responsible because it's an illegal business. But if the business is legal, it doesn't matter if it is gambling, if it is weapons production, if it is alcohol production, if it is a mining company, if it is a plastic bottle producer, a hotel, or whatever. You could go further. You could say a sugar should actually have a skull on the package, because it's highly dangerous for your health. McDonald's should have a big sign up that entering this place endangers your health, because obesity and these issues. So where do you draw the line? And we had that discussion in ISO, and the line that we drew was the legality. So if the business is legal, it can definitely claim to be socially responsible, because the question is, how do you address the things that you're doing? How do you address the impacts that you are having, etc.? So in a mining company, extractive industry, it is very much about the question, how do you do it? And we have so many negative examples in the mining industry, where I know one project in Angola where the mining company even delivers its dirty washing to Europe to be washed, and then ships it back again. So there's no local money be made, no additional jobs created. It's a completely secluded business that has nothing to do with the local community there, and that doesn't create any positive impact. So doing a lot of things wrong, and at the end the people start to strike because they don't see any positive developments for their own communities, etc. But I want to make one important point, and I think that's the key for the success of ISO 26000 and also the key for the success of CSR Company is that we do not understand CSR as a charity tool, not as a philanthropy, sponsorship, whatever instrument. It is not. And ISO actually has a sentence and says, if you're doing charity, philanthropy, sponsoring, that's great, but please don't call it CSR, because it's not. CSR is, or the other way around, charity, philanthropy is external. I'm doing something, writing a check, doing something outside of my own business, not addressing the question, how did I make that money that I'm writing on that check? So the question here is much more, how do we do our business? How do we make our profits? And not on what do we spend our profits? So making that distinction is crucial to understand my approach towards CSR, the approach of ISO 26000 towards CSR. And I know that in India, especially, CSR is always under this charity, community development aspect. And I think there has to be a change in that perception, because the billions of dollars that are spent under the Company Act in India on CSR money doesn't create the social impact that it could create. And that is simply because it is used as charity and not as a model or a business that would create more income, more positive social impact. That's where we have to make that thought change, especially in India.
So at CSR, you're using CSR as a strategic tool for strategy consulting. So how do you see that we can use CSR as a tool for crisis mitigation and sailing through these tough moments in human times?
I think it's exactly the crisis shows that philanthropy and charity doesn't work, because if I'm in a financial crisis, or there's a general crisis now, like now, we have a pandemic, so businesses are not going that well. They don't make that much money. They don't have the money to write on a check a big amount to support some charity or even a good cause, something really worth supporting, but they don't have the means to do it. So that's exactly the difference, because that is outside. That is not how we do our business. That is not how we have created the income. This is about, we are supporting a good cause here. CSR, as we understand it, as the management, strategic management tool, it helps you position your company to get through such crisis times, because you might rethink your business model, and you might rethink your resource intake, so you can reduce costs on resource use. You can create new products that will fit to the changing markets out there, because also people who have lost their jobs don't have that much income to buy anything that is on the market, but they will think 2-3 times before they spend a rupee. So they need to come up with products that fit the needs of the people. So much more related to my core business. Am I doing actually the right things? Am I using my resources properly? Am I positioning myself as a business, as a responsible business, to differentiate myself from my competitors? Am I getting a reputation that I'm a good company, that I'm doing the right things, etc.? So all these classical tools which are actually related to your core business and not to your charity aspects, because charity is the first thing a business cuts when the business isn't going good, because it's an outside cost. It will not be cut if it is something that is related to my core business, because I'm benefiting from it, and I will become a better, more successful, and more sustainable business. So I think that is, with that understanding, maybe the crisis actually helps us to change that perception of CSR as from a pure charity tool to an actually strategic management tool. And maybe just one more sentence as an evidence of anecdotal evidence. Germany, for me, which is our neighboring country and the biggest economy in Europe, etc., we had very little traction in Germany. Since the European Commission has come up with the Green Deal and with all this emphasis on climate change, on social responsibility, on sustainable development, suddenly we get really, I'm not exaggerating, a call every week from big German companies. We need to develop a CSR strategy. We need to embed this in our core business. We need to develop KPIs for our business plan related to sustainability, related to environment, etc., etc. So there's a big shift in this understanding. They did all the charity stuff. They did all the community development stuff, etc. But they're realizing that that doesn't help them in their business. And actually, the driver in this case is the European Commission that has put, I think, 1.8 billion euros into this Green Deal thing, drives them to rethink their CSR approach and get it towards a more strategic management approach.
If I may come in here, Martin.
I think so. Dr. Hopkins has something to say.
Always got something to say, you know me. Very erudite, Martin, and very clear. And I didn't know that you were the person behind ISO 26000. So congratulations on that. And also, I see you're working on FIFA 2020. You probably don't know, but I'm an advisor to the European Football Association, to UEFA. And in particular, the Respect program, and we can discuss how far we're getting on that. And I know how far you're getting in Qatar, because I've got friends working in that industry. But anyway, let me just the issue of charity. In my more recent articles, I've been talking about sustainable philanthropy. That because I always quote somebody from the Union Bank of Switzerland who said to me, well, you know, in terms of charity, we give a capital of $1 million or whatever it is, we get zero return, and we lose all our investment. So we look at that in a different way, in more the hard-nosed way that you are. But I find where I am, I'm speaking from Africa, that it's kind of the tail that wags the CSR dog, in a way, that people start, and a bit like in India too. And I've had so many discussions with Harsha on this, and she knows, I wouldn't say argument, but certainly discussion. I was pretty much against this 2% rule, where 2% of Indian profits had to go to an NGO and so on. And we've managed to change that a little bit over the years, where CSR activities now count as part of the 2% in some way. So that's an improvement. But like you, I take a multi-stakeholder view of CSR. And in that, we do reach out as one of the key stakeholders is the community. And so many companies talk all the time about their CSR projects. In fact, like you, I see a red flag when somebody says that to me. But and like you too, it's how you do your business. By the way, my first big work on CSR was with a tobacco company, so type of product. In fact, my colleague there, who head of the CSR there, actually developed the electronic cigarettes. But even today, I don't think they work very well. So with the multi-stakeholder view, I think you can encompass the charity angle. And and trying to encourage the charities that you're involved with or come to you. And probably like you, I get about 10 requests every day for money. And I try and say, well, have you thought how you could make it more sustainable? And well, we can go for a long discussion on that, because there are all different things that you can do and all sorts of things that you mean. And by sustainable, I don't just mean the environmental sustainability. I mean, something like a social enterprise. And I've been trying to work on that with companies. So I think, ISO, I've never read it because I've always had to pay for it. So unfortunately, I know a lot about it, but I've never actually read it.
I will send you a
copy.
copy.
Please, now. In fact, my mission accomplished. Thank you, Harsha. No, but
may I
please,
go to the next question?
Please.
Okay. So you are also, thank you so much for sharing the ISO 26000. Please share it with us also, because many of our participants would love to read.
I cannot do that because, of course, ISO 26000 is a copyrighted product which belongs to ISO. But for my fellow Michael, I will do an exception. But I cannot spread it broadly. That's the point.
Okay, no problem. You are also a program director for MBA course in outside, and we are also an institution in CSR. So what are the courses which are presently more contemporary, and do you see any possibility for collaborations?
Well, to start from behind, of course, there's always the possibility for collaboration. I will just explain shortly what we're doing. This is the Ferdinand Porsche University, which is owned by the Porsche family. It's a distant learning university, and they have a very small number of courses, all related to, like, we would call cutting edge, innovative products, services, topics that would be of interest. And I came up with the idea of creating an international CSR management MBA. And I approached the director here of the Porsche University, and he said, that fits perfectly into our portfolio, but you should talk with the Porsche guys, the family, if they are interested. And I had a meeting. You're meeting the big guy from Porsche. It's a family-owned business, and I had 15 minutes, and I presented and whatever. And the first sentence they said, "We believe this is how business will work in future. So we totally approve it, and we want you to go ahead, and whatever you need, just give us a call." So they understood that CSR as a strategic management tool is how businesses in future will have to work. I think that's the key takeaway from that. So I have developed, actually we, because I of course work with a team on developing a MBA program that would emphasize the strategic management approach. So you have a lot of strategy, a lot of management, a lot of communication, a lot of HR, a lot of these topics in this MBA. Link is, of course, the ISO 26000, which is the kind of guiding document that we're using through this whole thing. We cover, the good thing about distant learning is that you can get really the best people to teach, because they don't have to be at a certain time at a certain place. You can record the teachings from wherever they are. And so we have quite an impressive list of people conducting these courses. And yeah, we do collaborations. We have a collaboration with the University of Seoul in Korea, where we do a kind of joint degree. They can do their degree in Seoul, and then they get an additional certificate or degree from the portion. I think the added now, and that it might also be of interest, especially in the context of collaboration, is that we have broken down the elements of the whole MBA into packages. So you can also do just the communication part, for example, to take an example. You don't have to do the whole MBA. So if you're a communications person in a company and you want a profound lecture and teaching on communication on social responsibility, you can just book that element. And as it is distant learning, we have it on our computer. We just press the button and you can watch it after you've paid your fee. And then you get a certificate that you have done that. And that also then counts if you decide to continue as part of the MBA program. So you don't have to buy the whole MBA from the very start. You can just do what might be of personal or job-related interest, and then work your way forward towards doing the complete MBA. And in this, especially in this sector, so we can definitely think about collaboration possibilities.
Excellent. You've worked in developed countries and emerging countries. So where do you see that there is more scope of CSR? And I have some fireside questions over here. The first question is emerging country for CSR or developed countries?
I don't really see, I mean, there are differences that there's to put that up first. Of course, there are differences. But the topic of CSR, if you see it as a strategical management tool and not as a charity tool, then there's not that much difference, because the big difference would be that most companies in the developing world are part of international supply chains. So they would fall under whatever the buyer requests them to do. So you have this supply chain issue, which is a big driver, especially in India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, etc., China, where most businesses are part of the supply chain, and they want to be attractive to buyers. So we work, for example, with Marks and Spencer to implement ISO 26000 in the supply chain in India. And so a lot of factories in India actually have ISO 26000. And the nice thing is that they, at the beginning, of course, okay, the buyer is asking us another thing to do that has extra costs, time, effort, etc. But now they learned that by having ISO 26000, they're attractive for other buyers as well. So they can sell their things not only to Marks and Spencer, but to Zara or whoever else is interested in such kind of production. So it has actually improved their business. So from being very skeptical because of additional cost and effort and time, it has proven that they make more business out of it. So I guess that's one of the big differences. So the scope is set in the developed countries by the big buying organizations, and the supply chain reacts to these demands. That's one difference. The other difference is that I find is that, especially in the developing world, CSR is kind of replacement of a lot of things that in developed countries the state would do. So this whole charity philanthropy aspect is something that in a developed country would be the expectation that the state covers that. So the health, the education, etc., are typical things that the state would cover. So we pay our taxes that the state can provide these services. In developing countries, that's not that much the case, especially in rural India. I know I've worked in a project for a health center in a rural area in India. There's no state. There's no health center for a huge number of people spread over a large area, etc. And then companies take over that role of what the state actually should provide. And through their CSR activities. So you do have a different role of CSR as replacing government intervention into certain areas, which is a difference to developed countries where nobody would give in our case, the euro for a school, because that's government's job. We pay taxes for the state to provide appropriate schooling. So I think that's probably from the approach towards CSR, the biggest difference between these two.
Excellent. At this note, may I request if anyone has questions to come forward, and please switch on your camera and please ask the question. Mr. Arvind Giri. Yeah, yes, Dr. Hopkins, you have just mentioned something. Would you want to talk? Yeah.
Thank you. I don't want to get in the way of other people asking questions. Much more interested in that than listening to me, although I'm interested in listening to Martin, that's for sure. I think, Martin, that I'm not quite agree with you on a distinction that you just made between that's government and that's business. In fact, it's also the title of my forthcoming book, which is to actually look exactly at this issue, is how much is the responsibility of companies and where do you draw the line? And it varies, I think. Yeah. Because especially now, there's no question that companies are interested in creating effective demand. And we find this idea of basic income, for example, is attractive to companies because they see down the road not only a good thing, that it should be financed somehow by whom, but also the increases in effective demand for their own goods, especially amongst poor people. So that's why I slightly disagree with you on that. In fact, I've been fighting against the philanthropy aspect of the CSR for 20 years, and I think perhaps I failed so often that maybe I'm reaching across a little bit more than I did before. But I think that to me is the issue, is that how far do companies have to go, given that, in a sense, the private sector, we want to keep the private sector, and some people just want to get rid of it totally. I don't. We certainly need a private sector, but I think there needs to be a quid pro quo, and exactly where that should be. I'm already on page 300, Martin, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Please, there's more questions?
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Martin and Michael. And thank you, Harsha, for organizing the session. And it's a great pleasure for me to interacting with the founder of the ISO 26000, because last month only we did the complete the 5 days workshop certification course from IICSR on introduction to CSR and sustainability. So one of the tools and technique which internationally recognizes ISO 26000. So that time also I have asked the question to Professor Upadhyay, who was like telling us about explaining the process, how this ISO 26000 has been formed and what are the particulars and how it has been applicable to India per se. So that time he also told that he cannot share the document, like it is a law of secret or the secret weapon, and now I come to know that so it is from the founder only that it is secret weapon. But what I perceive or understood, sorry, but what I perceive or understood that unless anything has been shared or anything to the youth, specifically in the developing countries like India, so it will not be known to the people, because in India, if you see, like you said, that the CSR should not be understood in line with the philanthropy, rather it has to be understood in line with the business. So unless it has been the orientation has been given to the big industries, even the corporates and government or the strategist people as a part of the policy making or the decision making and the HR practices or the business practices. So this won't be involved as a part of their CSR strategy as well, that ISO 26000, because they in India, if we see merely the people, they are either as a part of like when Companies Act 2000 this in 2013 company has been came. So people were like really reluctant to invest even 2%. So now the corporates are coming to invest as a part of their business or the compulsory strategy by the government of India to invest on 2%. But still they are confused on investing on various things, that how the waste management could be the part of the ISO 26000. And yes, internationally, when we have the tendering, like various companies, like you said, it is a matter of the like supply chain or at globally, when it is for India, China, Bangladesh, or other developing countries. But if it could be involved as a part of strategy in business, then only it can be applicable in India as well. But unless it is shared, how it will be like the strategies, how could it use in India? So that is my question. And why it is like so secret that we cannot share the document with anybody? Because I don't know, if I don't have anything, how could I get the
Thanks.
detailed knowledge about that particular thing? So yeah.
Okay, thank you for the question, because it shows that there's a misunderstanding. The document is not secretive at all. It is just that you have to pay for it to get it, because it's a copyrighted document by ISO. I would recommend you to go on the website of BIS, the Indian Standards Institute. They sell these standards. I think in India it costs $30 or $35, the document. So it's not something that you really will bust your budget, and it is publicly available. I would recommend you to go to the BIS site and not to the ISO site, because you can also buy the standard from ISO directly, but that costs you 190 Swiss francs. So that's about 5-6 times the price that it is in India, because every national standards body can set the price for the standards according to their market and to their needs. So just to clarify that misunderstanding, it's not a secretive document, it's a publicly available document. It's just a question that you have to pay for it to get it, because it's a copyrighted document that, like you buy a book, you don't get a book for free, you have to pay for it in the bookstore. So in this case, you go to BIS and pay for it there. And yes, you're right, it's about the strategy and the money that has been invested in from the Company Act, the 2%, etc. We have actually set up in India, and I wanted to add that in India we're called Blue Sky CSR, because we were not allowed to use the CSR company as a company name. We are the first accredited by the state accredited inspection body for CSR to have to measure the social impact, to measure the actual efficiency or implementation of these projects. So not only what accountants would do the financial checking, if I don't know there's a bill for this, but actually what impact did you achieve by investing this money into this and this project? Or maybe there's another project where you would have a higher efficiency per capita, or where you to take, so that you can take a conscious management decision in which project it makes sense to invest, and in which maybe it doesn't make sense because there's no impact coming out of there, or the investment would have to be so high that you would get an impact that it might bust your budget. So this inspection body is something new for India. We got the accreditation in March this year, February this year, and then the virus came and whatever. But it's there, and we have already a number of companies using it because they realize that they're spending money on certain projects, but they don't really see any impact, also any return of their investment for themselves. Do we get actually credited for that? Do people recognize that we are doing this and this is not just falling from the sky or whatever? So I think that's another puzzle stone in that development, to move away from just pure charity check writing to actually linking the projects you're supporting with your business and putting it under the same framework as you would do other investments in your business. Because the funny part for me is always a lot of companies know until the last screw how much that costs and how much this other screw that cost 5 cents more would increase our profitability by 2.8%. But they have no idea on what money they're spending on social responsibility projects, what is happening with that money, what impact does it have, what return on investment does it have. So it's like a black hole. You just put money there and hope that something good happens. And we're trying to build this to create also the same approach to that you would have to your screw in your machine to the social responsibility issues.
Thank you, Martin. Like when we say ISO 26000, so if like I wanted to put up to my management that how it will add a value to our business in CSR practices. So like what is your turn? How should I put up to my management or the any CSR lead or any CSR manager? How it has to be like? What could be the approach so that they could involve as a part of their business strategy? ISO 26000.
Well, first of all, I think the strongest, one of the strongest arguments is that most businesses know ISO because they're using ISO standards in the technical field as quality management, as environmental management. So you don't have to explain the sender. This is not, everybody knows ISO. So you can go directly into the subject. ISO 26000 as the standard on social responsibility is, in that sense, the globally accepted document on social responsibility. So it's not something that Harsha, Michael, and Martin have sat together and developed, which would be nice, but I guess the global reach would be limited. But this is something that has been undergone a process of an accepted process to create an international standard. So you have a document that is, you don't have to invent something new. You have the whole script is there, and it helps companies actually save time and effort and money by not having to invent the wheel again, but use something that is already globally accepted. Then, of course, if you're, I don't know what you're doing, but in your business, if you are part of the global supply chain, then this is a very strong instrument to show to your buyers, we are doing this not according to our own little list of things of what we think is important in social responsibility, but something that is an international standard that has been approved in a 10-year-long process, etc. And then from the content, it is, of course, something where more than 400 experts globally have sat together, have developed this document. So it's a source of wisdom in the sense that you will have a definition. It's a one-stop shopping, I always call it, because you have a definition of social responsibility, you have principles of social responsibility, you have how to do a materiality matrix, materiality assessment, your stakeholder matrix. Then what subjects actually are relevant to your business? So from governance to human rights, to labor issues, to environment, to fair operating practices, to your customers, to the community. And then also, and how do I put this all in place? So it's all in one document. So you don't have to take like the UN Global Compact, which would have the principles, but then you have the SDGs, which has a kind of the goals that you want to achieve, and you have the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises and etc. So you have the ILO core labor standards for the labor issues. You have the Charter of Human Rights for the human rights chapter. This is all included in one document. So it allows you to go really through the whole subject and not miss out on something along the way. I think that's then, and then on the basis, depending on what business you are and what size you are, and if you're a part of supply chain or not, whatever, the arguments are, of course, positioning the company as a socially responsible business to differentiate from competitors. Secondly, as a risk management tool to identify potential risks that come from the different areas that the standard covers. So you have kind of early warning mechanisms, to reputational issues, to kind of showing we are doing this, we are socially responsible. So all the questions of verification, labels, all these things that are linked to this, etc., etc. So there's a lot of range for arguments. I do this on a daily basis with companies to try to convince them. And fun?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
And again, anecdotal evidence. In the early years, it was a tough sell because, especially when at the time when the standard wasn't published yet, yeah, why do we need this? Blah blah blah. Then business went very well, so why should we change something? We're doing fine anyhow, etc. And then always when something happens, like the Volkswagen case where they cheated on the emissions, etc., then they realize, oh, maybe we should do something in this field. So it's like I always say, I'm not. I mean, I feel it's sad in a sense, but I see it in my own way. I only go to the doctor when it hurts. I don't go to the doctor before. Actually, you should be doing socially responsible management before something happens, because then you can prevent things from happening, you can identify risks, etc. But businesses are not very much different to humans. They will only do things when there is a crisis or when there is a problem or something, or if it hurts. And that's the same approach here. So there are a few enlightened, the majority reacts only towards pain. That is the sad truth.
So prevention is better than cure.
Absolutely, but yeah, talk to yourself or talk to your family. Everybody goes to the, you go to the dentist only when it hurts.
Yeah. And I feel after listening to you, and thank you for your like valuable inputs, Martin, that one of the things maybe in India, so there is like not resistant, but they are reluctant to adopt the ISO 26000 approach. Is like already they have maybe there are 2-3 points. So one of first could be there are already the few approach like OHS, EHS standard which they are following in India, and second could be if they are like following the ISO 26000 approach, there could be many good things that will definitely reveal and add value to the business and as an organization also. But there could be many illegal things which could also come out from this ISO 26000 impact analysis report. So I think that is one of the bigger fear, because in India many people do the charity when they feel that there is something black, so God is always involved. So that is one of the things. Yeah, thank you for your
I totally agree with you. I have exactly that experience in India with some companies that we implemented ISO 26000 and they were telling us, can we maybe not look at so much on I don't know, corruption issues or things like that, to name it. But we're very good at environment and we're very good at this and that. So yeah, I agree that but again, it depends. I mean, the good thing about ISO 26000 in reality is its flexibility, because it depends on what are your material issues. So you don't, different to like say ISO 9001, where you have to do everything from page 1 to page 24. I think in the case of ISO 9000. And if you don't do it, then you don't get certified. So there are requirements, and you have to comply with these requirements from page 1 to page 24. ISO 26000 has this materiality matrix kind of thing. So only those things that are really relevant and significant to your business is something that you need to address. You don't have to address things that are not relevant and significant to your business. And just to make also the point, ISO 26000 has 106 pages, not 24 pages. So if you would start doing from page 1 to page 106, your grandchildren will still be working on it to try to implement it. And that's why we have this materiality matrix, because it doesn't make sense to do things that have no relevance to your business. You will fall asleep, or you will say, I'm wasting my time or my money on it. It has this filter, I always call it the filter, to identify those issues that are relevant and significant to your business, and then you only address those according to the standard. That's the flexibility part of it.
Yeah, thank you for your inputs. Maybe I will go to that 120 or 124 pages, and not my grandchildren, but I will myself first understand to make other understand the importance of it.
Please do that. Please do that.
So we are running short of time, but we can take one more question if there is. All right. May I request everyone to switch on the cameras? We have many new guests today, and it's great to see Mruganka. Let me introduce you all to Mruganka. She has been my ex-student from MBA in CSR batch and is presently working with Bajaj Group as project officer CSR. Mruganka. Good to see you. May I request one last question from I and Martin and all of us over here present?
Yeah. Hi, Harsha ma'am. It was really my pleasure to see you all. And this discussion was really helpful for me. Thanks to Martin sir, Michael sir.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Ms. Dimple, Ms. Kajal Joshi, Mr. Mohammad Rauzi, and Ms. Durga Surekha. Glad to see you all. If possible, please open your camera so we can take a group picture. And Mr. Yogesh Khatiyarmal as well. And Michael, before you leave, you're going to give a message to all of us in India. Okay, so may I take a picture right now? Okay, thank you. Now we need a message from you, which I will tag everywhere and send it across. Thank you, Kajal. Kajal, where are you from?
Sorry. Yeah. Hi, I'm Kajal and I work with RPG Group. So Arvind and Dimple are my colleagues.
Oh.
So we are so happy to be a part of this conversation. It was really, really insightful. Thanks a lot.
So Harsha, Kajal and Dimple is my team member. So I feel that there is Martin and Michael. So this is a golden opportunity for them as well to understand the ISO 26000 from the founder perspective. So I have just shared the link to attend the conference.
Thank you for doing that. So we have a good corporate gathering. We have the Bajaj Group, we have the RPG Group. I'm sure there are more others. And so it's glad to see everyone over here. So Martin, may we have one last message from your end before we closing remarks?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk here. And explain a little bit on strategic CSR and on ISO 26000. I think it always helps to clarify things like it's not a secretive document. I like that one. It's very public, very open, very used. My final word would be actually, I would like to see all of you as kind of ambassadors for spreading the word that CSR is something that can help you get through a crisis time like we are currently experiencing globally, and that it makes business sense to do CSR in a strategic way. It's not a cost, it's actually an investment. And that message needs to get spread, especially in India, where there is this loaded term of CSR with a pure charity aspect. And if we get that message across, then I think the benefit also for the whole country will be a lot bigger, because companies will then have a much bigger interest in doing these things rather than seeing it purely as a cost and as something that is prescribed by law and we have to do that, but rather that it's in their business interest to do this. Then you do these things with a much greater enthusiasm and with a much greater effort. So I think if we get that message across, then we achieve a lot for India, and we achieve a lot also for the people in India.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate the time that you've given us, and as an institute and on behalf of all of us, we highly appreciate the time and the knowledge that you've shared with us, which is quite hard to find, and know about ISO 26000 and your journey in the space from politics to CSR and sustainability and expanding in so many different continents. It's a pleasure to have you. And I'd like to thank Michael for being there as always, and Arvind and Mruganka and everyone who has joined today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.